Welcome to a conversation with John F. Kennedy Neighborhood Association members. We are excited to have this conversation about our experiences as living in the neighborhood, our environment, dealing with environmental issues, and we want to hear from our neighbors. JFK's boundaries in Oklahoma City are from Northeast 4th to Northeast 8th, and from Martin Luther King to Lincoln. We've been in existence since the late 60s. This is an area in which Blacks could live only in this area. We could not live beyond this area. We were once a thriving neighborhood community, and because of urban renewal, we became a blighted community, but we're coming back. We've been experiencing some environmental issues, and we're here to talk about, as I said, our experiences in living in the neighborhood, with the environmental issues that we've been facing, and how it's impacted our lives. So welcome. Thank you for being here with us today.
Sure.
Neighbors.
I'm Carrie Leslie. I'm a doctoral student at the University of Oklahoma in the sociology department. I'm focusing on environmental justice, specifically pollution disparities for communities. Living in close proximity to heavy industrial facilities, including the Citgo Petroleum Corporation's oil refinery across from the Frederick Douglass High School, Doley's Brothers Stone and Sand, Haskell Lemon Construction Company, and the Deerishborg Recycling Facility, as well as others.
Hello everyone, it's lovely to meet with you all today. My name is Amelia. I have your first question. It's also written on the prompts if you need. So my question is, describe some of your general or health concerns that you have or have had living in a JFK neighborhood, related to the surrounding industries, particularly related to air pollution from the Citgo oil refinery and other industries, strong industrial odors, white sticky substances on leaves, dust or other noticeable residue on cars and homes from nearby construction business facilities, and other environmental concerns.
Well, I tell you, I'm a gardener, and I have crepe myrtle bushes. I mean, they're really trees now. And one of the things I have noticed is a powdery substance on the leaves. Not only that, on the elephant ears, my hostas, and it was just a powdery feeling. My granddaughter, who came back from North Dakota, stayed with me for a while, and she has asthma. And I noticed that when she was around, or I kept her after daycare, she would have symptoms of asthmatic conditions. But when she went home on the northwest side of town, it looks like over that weekend, they were marginal. So she didn't have to use the inhaler or the nebulizer. And I noticed that. And then during the spring and late fall, if the wind is coming from the south, there is a pungent odor. I mean, you want to run in the house. I mean, and it feels, you can't really sit outside and enjoy your neighbors or barbecue outside. That odor just capsulizes, and you go in the house. And what's the use of having a nice yard, you can't visit with neighbors because of that condition.
It has been increasingly more difficult to be at times outside because of the odor, because of the smell. And what it smells like to me at times is like sulfur. But it seems like over time, I've developed more and more symptoms around chest congestion, sometimes tightening of chest. And she mentioned as well, when the wind is blowing a certain direction, it seems like it's more impactful than at other times. I haven't thought about it, but the last few years I really have been more concerned as we started planting a garden. You know, raised bed gardens, growing vegetables like cabbage and broccoli, things that are actually leafed, cauliflower, and we have ceased from having a community garden or garden in our backyard because I'm not sure the substances that have been floating around if that's going to be in the food that we're actually eating. So that's another detriment that I think has been something that's inhibited our family.
But I grew up in this neighborhood. I think I've been desensitized. And I used to run up south over there as a little kid and run into the weeds. And one time, I was about 10 or 11, and went into a sneezing fit, and that was my introduction to allergies. Okay, so one block going west, I would come to Fine Shield, and I would look down the street south, and I would see Haskell Lemon Construction Company.
Yeah.
Yeah, and okay, well, that was a construction company, okay. Well, I would smell some kind of stench. Okay, we had the sonic booms. Now, I'm saying this because of the booms that we've been experiencing over here. Those booms from the factory over there. So they had sonic booms back then. It was Oklahoma City was a sonic boom test. They called it Operation Bongo 2. And it was a controversial experiment organized by the FAA, in which over 1,253 sonic booms were generated over Oklahoma City over a period of 6 months, starting in February. So I'm concerned about air quality, water quality, and things like that.
I'm on the farthest eastern edge of JFK here, Douglas High School. So I'm close to the Citgo plant. The Citgo plant makes this humming sound that comes when they operate. And so we've had some neighbors who have moved in and didn't know that and have moved out who were able to afford to be able to do that. But that's something that I've been recording the last few years. And sometimes there's nights when it's like your ears are ringing. And so you like turn on a fan or you turn on music at night to like not hear that. That also that has a smokestack. Not sure, obviously what is coming out of that. On the eastern side of JFK is Height Plastics. So that's a name that's not on the list, but that is, they do a lot of, from my understanding, just like plastic recycling. And there's just plastic kind of, everywhere on their property. So it's not very fun to look at, but it's kind of like a sawzall tool where they're like chopping up the plastic, and that's very, very loud. And so it kind of comes in waves a little bit. And there's been nights I have video footage of them going after midnight, making these it's very, very loud. It made it on the news, helicopters in the air. The fire marshal said on TV to turn off your air conditioning units, close your windows. Well, we don't have a really great way to communicate to our neighbors other than there's just this massive fire at the end of our block.
Well, I know we touched on that briefly, but I wanted to ask you guys a question specifically about the booms. If you could describe your experience with them, how they affect you psychologically, is there any trauma associated with that? And also, we're curious about, have you witnessed any structural damage, had to deal with any repairs that are associated with those booms from the recycling facility?
Well, my house is one of the oldest, and yes, structural damage, and it's always on the east side of the house. And I noticed that about every neighbor on Everest, the stem walls, it has just cracked. It has I call it a hairline fracture in the stem wall. And every house on the east side has the same thing. Now sometimes the boom can be so loud that it actually shakes the windows. Can you imagine the little ones that going off? And we have a nursery on the corner of Lottie and Ford.
And we used to call them booms until we really had to recategorize it that it really feels like an explosion.
Yeah.
And the only other way I can describe it is sitting in a movie theater with the D box that you get all the effects and the shaking and all that. That's it. And you're in there, and all of a sudden you have a loud explosion. That's how it feels, because you're shaking, the house is shaking. For me, my mailbox, again, my house faces to the west, has actually shifted. So when you look at my mailbox, it's no longer parallel with the street. It's actually shifted, and bricks from them, it's a bricked-in mailbox, have fell off over time. Inside my house, that would be, as kind of Taylor was describing, on the south side of my house, which would be closest to where the explosions are coming from, in my son's bedroom. 2 years ago, we got the carpet replaced. When they pulled the carpet up, there was a separation between the wall and the concrete.
Wow, the stem.
And I want to say it was like that. And we had no idea and then my mind went back to, over time, there's been shifting in our house. So you see cracks, but some of that's just drywall, but we're gonna have to get probably someone to come out and look at the foundation.
Ditto to that.
The other thing I would add is, love the community, wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I want to say that as a disclaimer.
Yeah.
But when I built my house, no, it was never disclosed to me the types of things in the community. Now, is there some of that, Greg, you need to go around and look and, discover, you think about schools. I didn't think about, do I need to be concerned about a recycling plant and a Haskell Lemming and a Citgo plant? If you're selling homes in a community neighborhood, that they would be some of the environmental issues you would not have to face. So I would just say, add to that, it was never disclosed. So over time, it's been a little discouraging as people are moving into the community, wanting to know some of the things that are going on, and you have to really tell them. And in a lot of cases, it's discouraged people who are wanting to move into the community.
I have a marketing background as well, so we often talk about new neighbors coming in and how to talk about JFK, and what we think we have here is really special, and we check on our neighbors and make visits and write cards and deliver food. Like, that's just kind of a normal part of the community. We want other people to be involved, and so I'll just echo what Greg said, is it's challenging when you want to be honest about what is happening for people to want to come here. About the young kids as well as our elderly neighbors, there's neighbors that we check on frequently, and so just thinking about how they kind of get startled by that, as well as veterans who might have some PTSD, and so that might be a triggering event for them.
And I wondered if they told the new owners who are building, this is going on. They're building and expanding. Are they disclosing
Good question.
all of those kind of facts? And then we've got student housing up here. The library, students in the library, they're inhaling smoke and dust and listening to the booms. What is it doing to them? What's the long-term health risk?
What has your experience as far as community involvement and organizing related to environmental justice concerns?
I was the first neighborhood president in JFK, and we would meet over at East 6th Street Christian Church. And the neighbors in JFK are wonderful. You couldn't ask for a better.
I would just add that over time, when we began to realize that what we were experiencing wasn't normal.
Yeah.
That's the way I think about it. Wasn't normal, and that we actually may have some voice. We began to really say, what can we do? As early as 2010, we started tracking these explosions.
Yeah.
We started kind of old school on a piece of paper. Calling tree, marking it down, but started really trying to take notice and shape. And then over time, with the neighborhood, people talking, President Ms. Davis, what are some things that we could actually take a part in and do? So informing city officials, And over time, we have done a number of things. The Action Center, let me tell you about the Action Center. The Action Center, we wore the Action Center out. We had a meeting, they said, look, do not report another explosion. We can't take it no more. This is my words. In other words, there's nothing we can do. So you reporting it to the Action Center is, was we first told, report it to the Action Center, okay? And they got so many, over time, so many responses. Then we found that even outside of our neighborhood, along 4th Street and other businesses were also recording data, also were taking note of what was taking place as well. And so I say that we begin then to look at what are the things happening across the country. We're fortunate in our neighborhood, we have some historians, some librarians, understand history very well. At the same time, you have this thing called a renaissance. So there's new development coming to the community. We can see Page Woodson, the school being redone, and the development around us. And so there was all these conversations around how do we help develop in this community and neighborhood. Our proximity to downtown. We're merely blocks away from downtown, and all of the hotels being built. Matter of fact, I think the number was somewhere between 20 to 30 hotels being built. And yet, just east, here's this community dealing with a problem that no one seems to want to solve. So our involvement environmentally, we've been trying for a number of years.
Our president, Ms. Davis, has just almost exhausted all her time, all her energy trying to resolve these issues. I mean, going to meetings and talking to the mayor and talking to the fire department. I mean, just, and I know she must be totally exhausted and wore out because she has done a magnificent job in trying to get all this documentation. And we still having it. We're still having the same problem.
I'm glad you brought up the Action Center. Was it Ms. Davis that they weren't actually tracking it? There was someone who's told us that they would track, and then we asked for the history records and they couldn't provide them. So it seemed like we were calling in vain, at least for a season, that they would take the call, not record it, not be able to provide us, because we did have someone come say, can you provide the records? We tried to gather, and the Action Center, who we were supposed to call the city, wasn't able to present those to us. That we've all spent on this and what it could have been spent on.
Yeah.
So, like, Greg works with small businesses. I love working with small businesses. I mean, we can go around the room of, like, we're passionate about other things and we spend time on other things regardless, but we also are like, we have to spend time on this, right? And what is the opportunity cost of a neighborhood spending time on trying to fight these things? Because we don't get paid for any of this. The hour we're spending here right now, like, I could be meeting with someone else, I can be thinking about bigger ideas, I can be thinking about ways to improve the community just like other leaders here, but yet we're having conversations year after year and meeting after meeting. I mean, we spend a portion of each meeting speaking about environmental justice issues that could be talking about computer labs that we could be building and exposure to technology and business and all these things. So it's also a time issue for our neighborhood of, like, how many hours has one community put towards something that it could have been put towards something else.
Young adult children, 19 and 17, I want them to, whatever the legacy me and my wife leave to them, this is part of their community. And I want them to be able to feel like this is home for them. And not to be worried or thinking about some of the issues that we've been dealing with. And now when I hear this historical perspective of sonic booms and Haskell Lemon plant, way back in the 60s or whenever that was, and now we are, 2023, when is this going to change? They're still dealing with the fact that they love this community, but yet we're dealing with the same old environmental issues.
Does anyone care? We've been talking about the same thing over and over. Is anyone listening?
What is your hope for the future of the JFK neighborhood?
Especially because of this big development here. That's what I think. I think we'll have a good future here. And you all, Capstone, putting out information.
I think you all have brought our concerns to the forefront. And just by bringing it to the forefront, I think people will now sit up and take notice, which gives me hope that we'll have a brighter future because of the development. And I too, like Greg, I want to leave my daughter and granddaughter a legacy that they will be proud of. So, I grew up, Mama bought this house, and I grew up right here in JFK, and we ran to the park, and we did this, and this was our neighbor, and this is the closeness that we have. And that's what we pass on to our offspring, so they will have it better. There is hope. Was it Jesse Jackson? Keep hope alive. We want to keep that hope and take it a little bit further. And because of you students and professors, I'm sure the future looks bright.
The eye of the city has kind of turned to the east side for development. And so that just means there's a lot more people who are driving through. There's a lot more people who are interested in land who haven't been.
When my kids become adults and families, that they'll be able to live in this community and thrive. And again, the issues that have been at the forefront will be eradicated, and that the city will recognize that this community in JFK is just as much a part of the thriving community as it is downtown or anyone else. And that our families, our kids, and our people will be treated just like anywhere else. And there will be opportunities for us to live and thrive within Oklahoma City and the surrounding areas.
Everybody knows about booms. And there are various loudness. The loudest ones shake the homes. So I have not had structural damage, but others have. I also have experienced the dust or whatever substance it is. It settles on my patio table, and when I get ready to get it off in the spring and dust everything, I have to take a scraper to scrape it off.
My house is one of the older houses in the area, and also bordering with what Eva has mentioned about the pollution and the dust or whatever that filament in the air is settles on the house.
If I'm outside, if I'm not wearing a mask, it's hard to breathe. That's the smell, the odor that's coming from the south is pretty bad. And so my biggest concern is down the road is how is this going to affect my lungs or my body over time, experiencing this now. Not knowing, we have no idea what the long-term effects will be, so that's my greatest concern.
So my husband talked about us going outside. We love being outside, and I work the landscape. I weed it, and that's therapy for me, so I love doing that. But if I do it and there's a smell, I either go inside or I put a mask on. Same thing with just going to the mailbox. If you see the smoke and the wind is blowing our way and the smell is out there, we have to cover up or not go out at all. The blessing is we have a garage, but if I want to be out on my patio and eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner on the weekends, it's like, is the air killing us? I have to go back inside if I smell it. So my concern, and I'll share this, I haven't shared this with many people, but I came in 2009, and I've always had a clean bill of health all my life, and I'm thanking God for that. Well, last year in February, I was diagnosed with scleroderma. And it's a tightening of the skin, and there's some things that go along with that.
Autoimmune.
They said they don't know where that came from, but they said it could be environmental, and that was in many different articles. And so of course, I'm thinking about where I live, and we're still processing this whole diagnosis, and I'm ready to move. That's my biggest concern. I feel like that diagnosis had a lot to do with me being here starting in 2009. And we like to walk. We leave our house, we go to Washington Park, and there's times we have to walk through it. And so we either turn around or we just don't walk at all. And that's very restricting for a homeowner no matter where they live. It shouldn't happen. But there's some serious health concerns going on around here, and I don't know what is attributed to all that stuff or not, but and I'm not saying that this is the reason for that, but it's a shame that you come here healthy and then you end up trying to move because you're not anymore.
You can be moving around in your home, and all of a sudden you've got a bam, and it sometimes with an old person like myself, it can scare you into no return. It's really kind of scary, and that's something that I think is not good for anybody. It's just your environment should be a safe environment where you can live and work, be comfortable in.
It's more about the booms. We've talked a lot about the Sharable recycling plant in our class. We're aware that it recycles cars and it creates these really loud booms. And so I just want to ask more about those and how you feel it affects you in a variety of ways. I know you mentioned it's scary, so I know it can result in psychological trauma. Houses can infrastructure damage.
My home, I've got cracks all over my house that have come since I've lived there, and I'm pretty sure those cracks are a result of those booms that we have, because sometimes they shake the house.
Yeah.
And if the house is shaking, it's doing some damage to the foundations.
Yeah, we have a 2-story house, and so it does feel like the car comes crashing in the bottom floor if you're not on the bottom. It's that bad. So there's a variety of levels. So the minor ones, the sad thing is we kind of feel like, oh, it's just another boom when those minor ones come, because we're so used to it. We're kind of numb to it, and we shouldn't be. Yeah. But there are times when those really bad ones come, and it shakes the house and your body. It's just so startling.
The first time you hear it is really, disturbing, because you don't know what it is,
right,
and you don't know if you need to take cover.
Some of the seniors in the neighborhood, and it could scare us into a heart attack, if you're not expecting them. And that sounds a little childish, but it's very real.
I can imagine it's scary for pets and kids too in the area. I know the last group mentioned there's a nursery nearby. And that's probably very traumatic for kids to just experience at a young age. And have any of you had any experience calling the Action Center or DEQ about these explosions?
Miss Davis, our fearless leader, has been talking to the mayor and the city council and the DEQ. I think every resource that we can possibly tap into, we have, and have not gotten any major results.
Yeah, they built a wall that's supposed to absorb. It's hard to tell that it's working though.
Yeah.
It seems like they're just as loud as they were before, even after the wall was built. So.
Not as frequent as before, but
right.
The impact is just as strong.
Yeah, very, very disappointing.
And the wall wasn't until last year?
Yeah. It just happened last year.
And we have, I've been complaining since 2005. Marion grew up down here, right?
I grew up, but I left and came back in 2009 with the pressure. Yeah.
Some were, there were some areas that needed improvement, but there were some very nice housing areas down here.
That's right.
That urban renewal tore down. The early 2000s that they started rebuilding. They were supposed to rebuild a lot sooner.
Yes.
And, people had some beautiful homes. If you look at the home on 8th and Lottie on the northeast corner, they were of that caliber.
Yeah. Those two houses, 8th and Lottie, on both sides of the street, the north and south side, were some of the homes that we experienced back in that day.
She gathered about 25 Black women who either lived in this community or used to, or has experience or a heart for this community. And so they just gave us a charge to go out with our cameras and take pictures of what either gives life or brings death. We got to see some areas of Northeast Oklahoma City that were sort of hidden and not talked about anymore. And we got to tour some of these areas too, but the storyline from each woman was amazing, because one of them kind of pointed out all of the oil rigs that are in the neighborhood right next to a house. You don't find that in any other neighborhood in Oklahoma City. So that's one example. And of course, the sidewalks and how broken they were and not fixed, and the trees coming over into the walking path. But that oil rig thing really got my attention, because I did not pay attention to that, because it's kind of something we live with when we shouldn't.
What is your hope for the future of the JFK neighborhood?
So one of the reasons why I came to JFK is because my father grew up around here. He went to the only school that Blacks could go to back then, which is Douglas. I'm sure you've heard of that. Douglas High School. And so that was just kind of my way of coming back to my roots. And so to come here from a heart perspective, you know, and then have all these issues, for someone like me who has a desire to go back to their roots or come to their community to be a part of it, to not ever have to worry about things like this. It's not something you think about before you decide to build a house in a location. Now I will, from now and on, forever, I will think about this and research this, but a 20-something or 30-something-year-old who's not in your field is not gonna know to think about, are there environmental issues? Is there, you know, recycling plant near? Is there all these things? And so I will forever research that, but I don't want anyone, regardless of what your background is, to have to deal with this in any city. You know, we have a right to have clean air. We have a right to have property that doesn't damage based on booms. Everyone has that right. Our house is paid off. We have a paid off home in a Black neighborhood that now is being damaged, and it feels like we can do nothing about it. I just don't want that for anybody else in any generation coming forward.
My house will be paid for in November. And the idea that I own property that may be losing value.
Right.
You know, it's kind of disturbing. You know, because I thought, okay, this is going to be my last house. I'll buy a brand new house. I'll enjoy my retirement. When I first came, I sat out on the porch every morning. I no longer do that. But, and like she said, I don't want the children and the grandchildren to have to face these issues.
My home also is paid for, but mine is one of the older homes. But it's so nice to that's the American dream. One of the American dreams, to buy a home and have it paid for and enjoy your retirement. You know, that's it. And to know that the possibility exists that it's no good for you.
I'm thinking of my grandkids all the time. They come and spend time with us, and we do a lot of outdoor stuff. And a time where they can come and we can do things, we can do what we do out, because we're outside people. We bike, we walk, and we do all those things. I'm looking forward to a time that we can, as well as everyone else in our neighborhood, can enjoy the outdoors, especially in the spring and the summer, because most of the wind is coming from the north in the wintertime, but in the summertime, when you want to spend more time outside, it's coming from the south or the southwest.
Yes, indeed.
And it just kind of hinders that. And so I'm just looking forward to a time that our neighborhood will enjoy some of the same luxuries and privileges that other neighborhoods are having in the metro area.
We have that right. We have that right. We've earned it. Okay? And I don't think that's a hard thing to accept when you live in this country.
JFK is an amazing neighborhood. We're very active and we're led by an amazing woman who will not stop with the drip. And we love that about her, yes, the slow drip. And so we appreciate everything that she has done and everything you guys are gonna do. Generally speaking, just continue to research and tap into every resource that you have access to on our behalf. Because the more voices that are heard, the better off, we will all be here in our neighborhood, because we're shouting, we're screaming, we're yelling as loud as we can, as often as we can. So your help will be very much appreciated. Recommendations?
What's going to be for our good is probably not going to be for the good of the companies that are these people that are businesses around us. There's got to be some other areas of the country where something like this has happened, and if it has happened, how are each of us accommodated? If the companies have to be relocated, what options do they have in order for it to be good for both parties? Mm-hmm. If the smoke is blowing out of the plant and is blowing up, is there a way for that company to redirect that smoke so it doesn't just go through the neighborhood? Maybe if it means a extra tall, what do you call it? A
smokestack.
Stack that will keep it well above us. I mean, it doesn't eliminate the fact that we may still get the residue, but something to keep the air from just literally a fog just comes through the neighborhood. There's got to be a better way.
The old houses have been here, but our new houses have been built since 2000.
Yeah.
They should never have been allowed to be built.
Exactly. That's right.
So, maybe city council needs to work on it, but something needs to be done so that people are not allowed to move into areas that are environmentally inadequate.
So full disclosure is what needs to happen.
Right.
Just like they're doing with the lead paint in the houses, right. This needs to be a full disclosure situation. So I love that.
Yes.
I'm really surprised that the home is still standing. I really am, with all that it has experienced. Yeah, the consequences of being in this area has done to it, but it is still standing. So again, I say it's, it needs to be whatever you can do for us. All the information, representatives, community action programs, whatever we can get done here would be truly appreciated.